If the game plan is we're leaving irrespective of whether we're going to succeed or not, then why are we still there? Let's either commit to winning or let's get out.
What's happening right now is an example of failed leadership. The president put out a specific timetable for withdrawal of our troops, a timetable for the end of combat operations.
Welcome back to Harbor. The leading Republican presidential candidates have plenty of criticisms for President Obama's handling of the war in Afghanistan, as you just saw, but ask them for their plan, their specific plans, and they've got a whole lot of nothing. In a moment, we're going to get to some of their non-answers, but the Republicans have a potent issue to use against the president. And with the next U.S. troop drawdown scheduled for late summer, how will our engagement in Afghanistan affect the presidential race? We've got Eugene Robinson, Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist at The Washington Post, and Chris Cillizza, managing editor of PostPolitics.com and author of The Fix in the WashingtonPost.com. Both are MSNBC political analysts. Let's look at this. 3 times Fox News' Bret Baier tried to get a concrete answer from Mitt Romney on Afghanistan. Let's listen.
President Obama, as you know, has publicly said to stay the course until a withdrawal at the end of 2014. Would President Romney do anything different, and if so, how?
Well, first of all, I would exercise leadership, and by that I mean I would work with President Karzai. I would speak with President Karzai regularly.
But would you accelerate the withdrawal?
Well, the timing of withdrawal is going to be dependent upon what you hear from the conditions on the ground. That you understand by speaking with commanders there.
So are you taking a stand here while much of your party is souring on Afghanistan?
Well, before I take a stand on a particular course of action, I want to get the input from the people who are there.
So that's leadership. That's what he saw. That's what that guy calls leadership. Pay attention to that one. On This Weekend, Jonathan Karl tried to lock down Rick Santorum on what he'd do in Afghanistan. Let's listen to this.
Okay, so what does President Santorum do? Do you commit to winning, and what does that take? Or do you say it's time to get out?
Well, I think if you commit to winning and you change the entire dynamic in the region, you change the dynamic with respect to the Taliban, and you recognize that we are going to stay there and we're going to finish the job.
Well, those guys are out of gas. This morning, Andrea Mitchell tried to get an answer from Santorum on a withdrawal timetable. Let's see how she did. Let's listen.
Would you accelerate the withdrawal then?
Again, my feeling is that we should commit ourselves to be successful. But if the president's not committed himself, then I don't see any reason for us to continue to be there.
You know, Gene, here's an opportunity for you to show your brains compared to these guys. They don't know what they're talking about. After the horror of the last weekend with the killing of the 16 Afghans by the man who's apparently deranged, because he's been in there, what's his 4th tour, 3 in Iraq and now in Afghanistan. It seems to me that the Republicans don't have much to say here.
Well, what that translates as is we have no idea. I mean, Santorum sounds as if he wants to say, no, let's double down on Afghanistan. Let's stay in there. Let's finish the job, as he says. But he doesn't quite come out and say, I want to stay in Afghanistan, because he knows that's a terribly unpopular position. Romney tries to have it both ways by essentially saying, I do it differently from how the president's doing it, but he doesn't say he do a different thing. He just do it differently. There's nothing substantive there that I can hear.
You know, Chris, it's just like the people who chickened out about debating the Vietnam War. They wouldn't say they were against it or for it, so they'd say, well, if we're going to get in there, we got to win it. Well, what do you want us to do? Stay in there and so-called win a battle, which is basically a civil war. Here's what the president says he wants to get done in Afghanistan. Dismantle al-Qaeda. I guess we've almost done that. Break Taliban's momentum. Well, that's a hard thing to read. And third, train the Afghan force so they can take the lead and our troops can come home. These are relative discussions. The president says we can get that done over the next 2 years. What are the Republicans saying they want to do, and over what timetable?
Well, I think Gene is right. There is no plan, certainly not one I'm aware of, by Romney or Santorum. I think it is tied up, Chris, with the fact that the politics of this is true for the president as well as for Mitt Romney and Rick Santorum, the politics of it are not particularly good. The Washington Post and ABC News did a poll recently. More than half, a majority of people said we should get our troops out of there regardless of whether the Afghan troops are ready to take over. You've got large numbers of people in polling suggesting that they don't know what the ultimate goal is. They don't know if the Afghanistan war was worth fighting. Now, President Obama is trying to walk a very fine line between what he views as responsible policy and the political reality of this thing. When you're a candidate for president, you don't have to walk as fine a line, because the truth of the matter is Mitt Romney or Rick Santorum is not the president of the United States right now. They can say and do whatever they like, or not. In this case, not say and do whatever they like.
That's right,
because they don't have the responsibility.
You couldn't call them irresponsible. They weren't willing to take responsibility for anything. And a Gallup poll, by the way, taken, this is good news here, or interesting news, taken after the news of the U.S. servicemen allegedly killing those Afghan civilians, the 16 of them. 50% say President Obama should speed up troop withdrawal. A follow-up question asked if the recent events in Afghanistan had caused a change of opinion. 27% said it made them think troops should withdraw sooner. So people aren't even willing to admit, Gene, how much they want us to get out. But it gets down to that question of winning. And if you throw that word out, I think it does put the whole thing in perspective. What do you think Santorum means by winning?
I don't think Santorum necessarily knows what he means by winning. I mean, is it to wipe out the Taliban or destroy the possibility of the Taliban? Because the fact is that the people we call the Taliban, it's a group of ethnic Pashtun Afghans who live there, who are going to live there no matter when we pull out. So this question of whether we say we're going to pull out in 2 years or in 10 years, guess what? They're still going to be there. They're still going to be able to constitute themselves as a militia if they want.
Right. So he's basically suggesting, although I don't really mean he means to do it, in effect, the only way around getting his achievement of victory is to get rid of the people somehow, move them out, kill them all, fight them all, and shoot them all. I mean, how do you remove what is clearly a civil war, a potential civil war, among people who just don't agree with each other? It's a tribal battle.
You know, Chris, I think in some way this is still both politicians and the American public trying to come to terms with what modern war, Iraq, Afghanistan, and beyond means. I mean, I think you've hit at the heart of it. What is winning? How do we define winning? And is there a way that we as an American people can agree on the criteria where we can leave and say, we did what we set out to do? President Obama is clearly laying those things out, and as you mentioned. But I would say, look, the reason that the Republican candidates aren't laying them on is they don't have to, and they know laying them out in picking any three things that say this means winning means that 55 to 60% of the American public probably disagrees with you, because the issue is just so freighted with, as you point out, Vietnam and Iraq and all of that.
And this isn't between the hard hats and the long hairs and all that stuff that went on in Vietnam. Gene and I remember. It isn't the cultural difference of, the silent majority. Nobody's happy with this war. Anyway, thank you, Chris Cillizza, and thank you, Eugene Robinson. As always, great report.